It was about missing kids.
It was just a dream.
About a real place.
But you, of all people, know that dead is just a word. Hello, Finney. I am a bottomless pit of sin.
In Black Phone 2, death is less of a finish line and more of a pit stop. Scott Derrickson returns to the world he conjured in the Black Phone, dragging us back into a twisted tale of unfinished business, spectral suffering, and the stubborn persistence of evil. Adapted from Joe Hill's short story, The Black Phone turned a standard abduction thriller into something hauntingly disturbing. Set in late 1970s Denver, it followed 13-year-old Finney Blake, a quiet boy navigating bullies, an abusive home, and an escalating wave of child kidnappings. When Finney is taken by a sadistic killer known as the Grabber, he awakes in a soundproof basement, where a broken rotary phone becomes a lifeline to the dead, the voices of previous victims calling from beyond to help him survive.
There's a dirt section of the floor in the hallway where the tile is loose.
We'll have enough time?
Each caller offers fragmented clues, a hidden cable, a tunnel, a strategy, their failed escapes now building Finney's. Outside, his sister Gwen, gifted with psychic visions inherited from their late mother, pieces together his location. When the final confrontation comes, Finney is no longer a terrified boy, he's a survivor, aided by those who couldn't escape before him. Ethan Hawke's Grabber was terrifying, not because of a tragic backstory, but because of the absence of one. His theatrical mask and psychological games made him unknowable, evil as performance. Meanwhile, Finney's arc was terrific. He begins the film as a passive observer, bullied, beaten, silenced. But through his conversations with the dead, he becomes an agent of change, not just for himself, but for them. The ghosts don't just want revenge, they want closure, and Finney becomes the vessel through which they all finally get it.
Look what you made me do. You made me kill my brother.
Set in 1982, 4 years after Finney Blake's narrow escape, the sequel reopens old wounds with a new supernatural edge, and proves that killing the villain doesn't always kill the problem. Finney and his sister Gwen are still reeling from the events of the first film. Finney may have broken the Grabber's neck, but a snapped vertebra is more of a comma than a period. Gwen continues to be haunted by visions, this time of 3 boys from a summer camp murdered long ago. Despite their best efforts to move on, trauma is staying on hold, waiting for them to pick up the line again. That line, of course, is the titular Black Phone, a disconnected relic that still carries the echoes of the dead. In the first film, it served as a lifeline between Finney and the victims of the Grabber, but in Black Phone 2, the rules of engagement shift. The Grabber may be dead, but he's not gone, and unlike his victims, who were tethered to the phone's powers of communication, he returns as something far more dangerous, a vengeful spirit with abilities that bleed into the real world. 4 years after his death, he's devised a way to lure the Blake siblings out into the snow-laced wilderness, not for some random act of haunting, but as a calculated revenge. His target, Gwen. His motive, pure vengeance against Finney for manipulating him into killing his own brother in the climax of the first film. This sequel leans hard into the supernatural. Where the original flirted with the paranormal, Black Phone 2 goes full seance. The mechanics of ghosts, visions, and telepathy are explored, with the film laying down rules for how these abilities operate, and in doing so it expands the mythology to varying degrees of success. If the first film was a claustrophobic tale of escape, Black Phone 2 is an expansion of the haunted world itself. The fear isn't confined to a basement anymore. It's in the past, the family tree, the afterlife, and most chillingly, it's still on the line.
What do you think happens when you die in a dream?
Hey guys, what's happening? Niyat here with Film Comics Explained, and today we're breaking down Black Phone 2. Don't forget to hit subscribe and the notification icon to stay up to date on all the latest content, and click the like button to help appease the algorithm gods. Also, if you'd like to make a suggestion on what you want me to cover next, please don't hesitate to ask in the comments below.
Vengeance. is mine.
The film opens in a moment disconnected from the events of the first film, yet wholly foundational. It's 1957 at Camp Alpine in the Colorado Rockies. Hope Adler, a troubled woman, uses a remote payphone to make a call. Her voice is fragmented with fear, claiming she's found something, numbers etched into eyes. That's all we get before the call is cut by static and Hope hangs up. Jumping to 1982, it's been 4 years since Finney defeated the Grabber and became a bit of a local legend. No longer the shy, stammering victim, Finney has become a hard-edged teen with a short fuse, but his tough guy persona is a mask for deep trauma, numbed by weed and buried under layers of armor. When he beats up a new kid at school, it's clear Finney is still caught in a private war no one else sees. Gwen watches with concern. She's grown too, not just in years, but in bitterness. Her gift, or curse of second sight, continues to torment her, but their home life has changed. Terrence, their once abusive alcoholic father, is now sober and quieter, remorse etched into every hesitant step. It's a new world, but the old demons are still hiding in the corners, with their father clearly doing his best not to drink again. The Blakes have also taken in Ernesto into their orbit, the younger brother of Robin, the boy who mentored and protected Finney in the first film. Ernie is sweet, earnest, and clearly smitten with Gwen, who seems to feel the same. In the first film, Gwen's psychic dreams were an eerie side effect, a glimmer of something uncanny that barely flirted with her conscious control. But in Black Phone 2, her abilities are not only central, they evolve. Gwen doesn't just receive cryptic visions from the void, she's now actively communing with the dead. Her dreamscapes become haunted gathering grounds where the spirits of the Grabber's earliest victims seek her out. The past is sticky, and Gwen is the unlucky inheritor of her family's uncanny connection to it. As the film progresses, Gwen's abilities develop in tandem with the rising stakes, and she begins to understand the mechanics of her dream world. And through these visions, she forges a link across time and blood, a connection to a long-dead mother. Gwen's visions are more vivid, more insistent than before, now full cinematic nightmares with narrative structure and chilling detail. In one, she sees a boy named Felix, nervous and alone as he arrives at Camp Alpine. Felix runs from a familiar figure in the dark, the Grabber, and is cut down and thrown into a lake, his final act scratching the letter W into the ice. When Gwen awakes, she's outside, having sleepwalked in the middle of the night. Finney pulls her back to reality, but it's a reality that's bending at the seams. Her reputation at school is stained by whispers of witchcraft and morbid fascination, and her attempts to understand the occult, to make sense of her visions, are mocked by her classmates. Ernie's gentle curiosity and compassion, along with her brother's support, are the only foundations keeping her up. Then comes another dream. This time, it's a boy named Cal, full of youthful energy and charm, laughing with his campmates. But like Felix, he meets a brutal fate. Hacked apart by the Grabber, stuffed into an oven like a sacrificial offering, and then dumped again in the icy lake. This time, the letter scratched is B. Feeling the pull of her visions, Gwen sleepwalks to the ruins of the Grabber's house, the basement of horrors where Finney nearly died. There, the black phone still hangs on the wall. It rings, she answers. On the other end is the voice of Hope Adler, the woman from the cold open, revealed to be her and Finney's mother. It wasn't a flashback, it was a temporal echo. Hope was trying to reach Gwen, but the call is cut short, and things begin to get worse. Max, the Grabber's brother who died in the first film trying to save Finney, appears and tells her she shouldn't be here as it's not safe. The Grabber begins walking down the steps, only for Gwen to snap out of the dream and find her brother instead. She tells him that the voice on the phone was their mother, a woman broken by her own second sight and supposedly driven mad. The black phone becomes an anchor, a device in both the literal and narrative sense that connects timelines, binds souls, and carries messages from a liminal space where reality, memory, and death converge. The film hints at something larger, a mythos that spans decades, even generations. There's an implication that the black phone isn't just haunted by dead children, but maintained by some force. Gwen's visions and Finney's ghosts form parallel paths, but both are being pulled toward a final confrontation with the source, something that may not be human, or even corporeal. The messages in the eye suggest a code, a sequence, and when enough letters are scratched, the truth will be unleashed. After Gwen's escalating nightmares about Camp Alpine, the siblings make a bold decision. Gwen discovers a pamphlet for the camp, and they craft a plan to work there as counselors in training. Their father Terrence, now sober and striving to make amends, reluctantly agrees to let them go along with Ernesto. The drive through the mountains is grim. Nature itself seems to be colluding with the supernatural, and they stumble upon a pretty horrific accident. A snowstorm then barrels in, cutting visibility to nothing, and Finney sprints ahead to guide the truck. This is where the trio are greeted by Armando, the camp's manager, and his niece Mustang, who usher them in and inform them that the camp had been cancelled due to the extreme weather, and that they're the only people that arrived. Gwen is assigned to a separate dormitory from the boys, leaving her isolated as night falls, a crucial shift because this film makes a meal out of isolation. Alone, her gift turns to full-blown nightmare. She sees Spike, a member of the camp's music band, and the vision turns cruel and swift. Spike's head is split cleanly in half, and his ghost, like the others before him, carves the letter H into the ice. Meanwhile, outside in the frigid darkness, the payphone that Hope Adler used at the very beginning begins to ring. Finney tries to ignore it, but it doesn't stop. When he finally answers it, it's the grabber's voice. Cold, venomous, almost calm, whispering, "Hell isn't flames, it's ice." At the same time, Felix, Cal, and Spike manifest around Gwen. Their silent spectral presence is broken when Cal reaches out and touches her arm, leaving a burn mark. Too shaken to be alone, Gwen ends up in the boys' dorm, where Ernesto tries awkwardly but sweetly to comfort her. Their almost kiss is a fleeting spark of teenage innocence in a story where innocence doesn't seem to last long. But Finney, ever the older brother, cuts them off. The next morning, Armando gathers them for breakfast. He's wary, especially about Gwen sleeping in the boys' dorm, but when she mentions Hope, their mother, everything tilts. Hope, he reveals, once worked here as a counselor under the camp name Starlight. As the ringing phone interrupts again, Finney answers, and this time it's Felix's voice on the line. He's stuck, lost in a liminal space, unable to move on. The dead are calling Finney for help, but their voices are also reminders of everything he's tried to bury. They turn to Kenneth and Barbara, longtime camp administrators, to learn more about the camp's past. Barbara's reaction to Gwen isn't helpful. She scolds Gwen for her unladylike language and for sleeping in the boys' dorm. Gwen pushes back, calling her out for her sanctimonious attitude. Unfortunately, that night, Gwen sleepwalks and drifts into the kitchen like a marionette pulled by a string. At the same time, outside, the payphone wails again, dragging Finney from uneasy sleep. On the other end, the grabber taunts him, claiming he's going to take away what he loves most. The grabber's ghost then manifests physically, tossing Gwen around the kitchen in front of everyone. It's a startling escalation of the supernatural rules. The entity is no longer bound to whispers. It's capable of direct harm. Ernesto and Mustang rush in to drag Gwen away as the grabber nearly throws her into the oven, an echo of Cal's earlier death. But at the last moment, he lets her drop and walks away. In the chapel-turned-confessional, Gwen explains her visions, fragmented glimpses of murdered children, letters clawed into frost, and the presence of a long-dead Mother Hope, to an increasingly rattled group of survivors. Armando recognizes the dead boys Gwen describes as children that went missing here. The twist of the blade comes when Finney notices someone in an old camp photo. A maintenance man named Bill, who used to strut around with a belt like a Wild West outlaw, was none other than the grabber. His cowboy nickname, Wild Bill Hickok, suddenly explains the letters WBH that each murdered boy scratched into the ice before death. The revelation is critical. This camp wasn't just haunted by ghosts of children, it was the origin point of the grabber's violence. This was his genesis, and the lake frozen over is his graveyard and sanctuary. By discovering the boys' bodies trapped beneath the ice, Gwen believes they can finally set their spirits free and sever the grabber's power. But closure is not a clean process, especially when your villain is a supernatural revenant. Armando, alone in his office and staring at photos of the boys, is suddenly confronted by this phenomenon, an image of the grabber's mask, blood and snow smeared on the glass like a Rorschach test. The grabber knows they're onto him, and the storm outside is no longer just meteorological, it's spiritual. Even Finney finds himself flailing for meaning. When Armando catches him smoking a joint outside, it's not a throwaway bonding scene. It's the weary mentor and the survivor discussing pain, memory, and responsibility. The grabber may haunt Gwen, but Finney carries his own cross, the guilt of surviving, and the fear that his presence invites danger. Black Phone 2 recontextualizes the past, and with it, everything we thought we knew about Finney and Gwen's family. The sequel retcons one of the lingering questions from the first film. What happened to their mother? Gwen continues her descent into inherited memory, and the grabber invites Gwen to see what really happened. Hope, we learn, was no stranger to the supernatural. She had the same abilities as Gwen. While Gwen inherited the lion's share of this psychic potential, Finney's ability to communicate with the dead in the first film suddenly makes more sense. But the truth is even darker than that. Hope's visions led her to the grabber's house, where she found the abducted paperboy named Billy, the very first victim. But she never got the chance to warn anyone. The grabber intercepted her, and in one of the film's most harrowing reveals, we learn that he murdered Hope and staged her death as a suicide, a cruel manipulation designed to cover his tracks and emotionally devastate her family. This revelation lands like a gut punch. It reframes everything, especially the events of the first film. The grabber's presence in the Blakes' lives was not random. He'd been in their home, he knew who they were, and his focus on Finney was calculated. He tells Gwen that death wasn't the escape hatch we might have assumed it to be. Upon his demise, the grabber descended into hell. He describes it as a place where what's left of your soul is carved away, leaving behind only sin. No empathy, no rationality, just rage and cruelty. This forged a new grabber, one with a spectral upgrade and no remnants of humanity. Where the first film's grabber was unsettling in his unstable humanity, the sequel's iteration is a full-fledged horror entity, bent solely on metaphysical revenge and spiritually calculated cruelty. Once limited to the basement, the grabber now has a strange, elastic reach. At Camp Alpine Lake, the site of his earliest crimes, his power is amplified. The unresolved deaths act as a spiritual fuel, allowing the grabber's ghost to stalk Gwen's dreams and even physically attack her in the real world. This enables the grabber to cut her with his axe, with the cut bleeding in real time. In a desperate effort to save Gwen, the ghost children, Felix, Cal, Spike, and Billy intervene, pulling her back from the brink. What follows is an eerie escalation. Gwen finds herself on the lake, the icy prison where the boys' bodies lie entombed. Armando is there, chipping away at the ice looking for the boys, but the grabber reappears, smashing through the ice and dragging Armando into the frozen depths. Inside the vision, Gwen is trapped in a phone booth, but this time Gwen fights back. Channeling her will and the spirits of the boys, she forces an explosion of psychic energy that destroys the booth and throws the grabber back. Outside the vision, Gwen is saved and the group drags Armando from the lake, cold and shaken but alive. As the climax unfolds, the film shifts from haunted mystery into a full-blown supernatural reckoning, bringing every thread crashing together. Gwen and Finney are no longer just haunted kids, they're the only ones capable of confronting a force that has outlived death. Their father Terrence storms into Camp Alpine with a snowplow, intent on bringing his children home, and the family fractures begin to bind. Gwen calls out Finney for emotionally barricading himself behind anger and bravado, while Terrence, upon hearing Gwen describe his private moment of blame and mourning the night he found Hope's body, realizes she's not delusional, she's connected to something beyond comprehension. He doesn't just stay, he becomes a believer. And so the trio, joined by Armando, Ernesto, Mustang, Kenneth and Barbara, set about finding the missing boys. But of course the grabber doesn't go quietly. He seizes the cover of night and unleashes hell once more. Kenneth is struck with an axe and dragged screaming across the lake, where he collides violently with Barbara, sending her crashing face first into the ice. When the grabber attempts to consolidate his spectral hold by preventing the victims from being found, Gwen uses her dream-walking powers to fight back. In an act of supernatural resistance, she locates the boys' bodies. By recovering their remains, she frees their souls, and in doing so, she robs the grabber of his power, giving the boys the ability to fight back. It's poetic justice. The children he silenced in life now become the instruments of his destruction. The grabber, now desperate, reveals his true form beneath the mask, no longer a spectral trickster, but a rotting monstrosity of evil, stripped of performance and theatricality. The long-awaited final confrontation between Finney and the grabber erupts as a cathartic, brutal reckoning. Finney smashes the killer's face against the ice again and again, while Gwen joins in, chopping at the Phantom until he splinters apart like a dying myth. At last, the Ghost Boys descend upon the grabber and drag him back into the frozen lake to an icy hell of his own making. In the aftermath, Armando solemnly calls the families of the dead boys to finally give them closure, ending decades of unanswered grief. Just when things seem quiet, Gwen hears the phone ring again. On the other end is the voice of Hope, speaking to her from a realm beyond. Hope reassures Gwen that she's proud of her and Finney, that their suffering had meaning, and that everything is going to be alright. The end moments offer a sense of closure. Gwen, Finney, Ernesto, and Terrence drive away from the nightmare. It's sweet, but it's also a little suspect. After all, the Black Phone universe doesn't treat death as the end. Ghosts don't die, power doesn't just vanish, and if there are more undiscovered victims, there's every possibility the grabber's icy grip could return. A pillar of Black Phone 2 is faith, not in the didactic, preachy sense, but in a messy, lived-in way. Gwen's belief in God is introduced casually. In a quiet moment with Ernesto, she admits she prays. It's not the centerpiece of her identity, but it is there, quietly guiding her. There's an undercurrent of divine duality running beneath the surface. The grabber, upon death, confirms he was sent to hell. It's not the brimstone pit of Sunday school. It's cold, unrelenting, and soul-scraping. And yet, this isn't a film solely about damnation. In a moment of grace, Gwen's deceased mother appears in spirit, gently confirming the existence of heaven. The film never shouts this revelation, it simply demonstrates that if hell is real, then so is heaven.
What do you think happens when you die? It's time to find out.
Black Phone 2 has a genuinely intriguing springboard, but I think the film keeps stepping on its own throat. The premise and escalation of supernatural elements are great, but their execution leaves much to be desired. The writing is the biggest wobble. Dialogue oscillates between on-the-nose exposition and quippy filler, flattening moments that need texture or silence, and the delivery, especially from the child actors, is very wooden. Gwen, in particular, who is now the lead, is the weakest of the ensemble. Structure doesn't help. The middle act meanders through clue-gathering and soft red herrings, only to sprint in the third act with contrivances that feel reverse-engineered from the ending. Tension plateaus early because the film telegraphs its scares, and despite the grabber being more powerful than ever, he's not nearly as menacing as he was in the first film. Production design is strong, but the visual language is generic, with set pieces that aren't scary at all. The mythology also strains. The rules of the phone and visions expand when convenient, contract when the plot needs a wall, and the result is less mystique than make it up as we go. By the time the credits roll, Black Phone 2 hasn't disgraced the original so much as it has reminded you what the original got right. A simple spine, characters who breathe, and scares that grow from situation rather than sound cues. Black Phone 2 has an interesting idea, but the execution is shaky.
A lot of people don't know this, but Jason Blum and I started a theater company when we were like 20 years old. I've known this guy forever. And so to watch him create this company and create this brand that's made so many people happy, and they've had a lot of success with Universal, but it's personal to me.
Hello, Finney.